When wealthy CEO James Wellington challenged a janitor to play a $2 million piano in front of the city's elite, he expected entertainment. What he got instead was a performance that would expose his own prejudice and reveal a truth that had been hiding in plain sight for 2 years. This is the story of Marcus Chen, the man who proved that sometimes the most extraordinary people are the ones we never truly see. The prestigious Thornfield Concert Hall gleamed under warm stage lights as Marcus Chen, a 38-year-old janitor in an olive-green uniform, meticulously polished the brass fixtures on the grand stage. To the elegantly dressed patrons beginning to arrive for the annual foundation gala, he was practically invisible, just another member of the maintenance crew, ensuring everything sparkled for the evening's black-tie fundraiser. His cleaning supplies and worn work boots marked him as someone who existed in the background, part of the scenery rather than part of the show. For 2 years, Marcus had worked in the shadows of this magnificent venue, cleaning and preparing the hall for performances he would never be part of. The job wasn't glamorous, but it provided exactly what he needed: steady income, reliable hours, and most importantly, the flexibility to pick up his 6-year-old daughter Emma from school every afternoon. He could be home with her in the evenings, help with homework, make dinner, and tuck her into bed with stories and songs. For a single father, these moments were priceless. But as he cleaned around the stunning Steinway concert grand piano dominating the center stage, Marcus felt that familiar ache of longing he had learned to suppress over the years. The piano's polished black surface reflected the stage lights like a mirror, and for just a moment Marcus allowed himself to remember the dreams he had buried beneath his custodial duties. His fingers unconsciously mimicked the movements of playing as he dusted around the keys, muscle memory from another life threatening to surface. The hall was filling now with the city's wealthiest philanthropists, business leaders, and cultural elite, people whose worlds were so far removed from his own that they might as well be living on different planets. They swept past him without a glance, their designer gowns and tailored tuxedos a stark contrast to his utilitarian uniform. James Wellington, the 52-year-old CEO of Wellington Industries and chairman of the Thornfield Foundation Board, strode into the hall with the confident bearing of a man accustomed to commanding attention in any room he entered. His impeccably tailored tuxedo probably cost more than Marcus earned in 3 months, and his gold watch caught the light as he checked the time with practiced efficiency. This was a man whose time was measured in millions of dollars, whose decisions affected hundreds of employees, whose name appeared regularly in the business pages of the newspaper. "Almost finished there, Marcus?" Wellington called out, approaching the stage with casual authority. He knew Marcus's name. Wellington made it a point to know the names of all the staff, but there was a distance in his tone, the kind of polite acknowledgement one might give to useful but ultimately replaceable help. "Yes, sir, Mr. Wellington," Marcus replied, stepping back from the piano respectfully. "Everything should be ready for tonight's performance." As Wellington checked details around the stage, other board members and major donors began filtering into the hall for the pre-event reception. Marcus recognized many of them from his 2 years at the venue, titans of industry, celebrated artists, and society figures whose names regularly appeared in the culture sections of the city's newspapers. They carried themselves with the easy confidence that comes from never having to worry about money, never having to choose between dreams and survival. Then Wellington paused, looking at Marcus with sudden curiosity, a hint of amusement entering his voice. "You know, Marcus," he said, gesturing toward the magnificent piano, "I've always wondered if any of our staff have hidden musical talents." Marcus felt heat rise to his cheeks, caught off guard by the question. "A little, sir. Nothing professional," he replied quietly, hoping to deflect further inquiry. But Wellington's eyebrows raised with interest, and Marcus could see the wheels turning in the CEO's mind. This was about to become entertainment. Before Marcus could say anything more, Wellington had already turned to address the growing crowd of elegantly dressed guests scattered throughout the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice carrying effortlessly through the acoustically perfect space, "I've just discovered that our custodial staff member Marcus here claims to have some piano skills. What do you say we have a little entertainment before the real show begins?" A murmur of amused interest rippled through the crowd, and Marcus felt his stomach drop as he realized what was happening. Wellington was treating this as a novelty, a bit of light entertainment to amuse the wealthy patrons before the serious musicians arrived. The condescension in the CEO's tone was unmistakable, though perhaps unintentional. This was going to be a show, and Marcus was the curiosity on display. "Mr. Wellington," Marcus said quietly, maintaining his composure despite the rising tension in his chest, "I don't think that would be appropriate." But Wellington was already enjoying himself too much to stop now. "Nonsense," he declared with a dismissive wave. "It's a gala after all. Everyone should contribute to the entertainment. Besides, how often do we get to hear what our maintenance staff can do with a $2 million piano?" The crowd laughed appreciatively at Wellington's comment, a sound that felt like needles against Marcus's skin. He watched as several people pulled out their phones, ready to record what they assumed would be an amusing spectacle. A working-class janitor attempting classical music for an audience of cultural sophisticates. Some were already smiling in anticipation of the awkward performance they expected to witness. Marcus looked out at the sea of expectant faces, many wearing expressions of barely concealed condescending amusement, and felt something shift deep inside him. These people saw him as a curiosity, as entertainment for their next cocktail party story. They had no idea who he really was, or what he had sacrificed to stand before them in this humble uniform. "What would you like me to play?" Marcus asked, his voice steady despite his racing heart and the anger quietly building beneath his calm exterior. Wellington grinned broadly and gestured grandly toward the piano like a ringmaster introducing the next act. "Surprise us, Marcus. Play whatever you think will impress this distinguished crowd." Marcus walked slowly to the piano bench, his cleaning cloth still clutched in one hand, a reminder of who they thought he was. He set it carefully aside on the edge of the stage and sat down, adjusting the bench to the proper height with movements that were automatic, practiced, born of years at the keyboard. His hands found their familiar position above the keys, hovering there for just a moment. And in that moment, Marcus allowed himself to remember who he had been before life forced him to choose between his dreams and his responsibilities as a father. He remembered the conservatory, the recitals, the standing ovations, the future that had once stretched before him like an open road. Then his fingers touched the keys, and he began to play Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, Opus 9, number 2. The first notes floated through the concert hall with a clarity and beauty that immediately transformed the atmosphere from amused anticipation to something approaching reverence. Marcus's fingers moved across the keys with the fluid grace of someone who had spent countless hours, countless years, perfecting his technique. He brought out every nuance of Chopin's delicate and emotionally complex composition, his hands dancing across the keyboard with confident authority. As the piece progressed, the crowd fell completely silent. The condescending smiles faded from their faces, replaced first by surprise, then by genuine shock, and finally by growing admiration. This wasn't a janitor stumbling through a simple tune they could chuckle about later. This was a trained musician, a real artist, performing one of the most beloved pieces in the classical repertoire, with professional skill and profound emotional depth. Marcus lost himself completely in the music, feeling the familiar joy of artistic expression he had denied himself for so long. This was who he truly was, beneath the custodial uniform, a classically trained pianist who had given up his performing career to provide stability for his daughter after his wife died in a car accident 4 years earlier. Wellington stood transfixed near the stage, watching Marcus' hands dance across the keyboard with skill that made it abundantly clear this was not some hidden hobby. For a long moment, no one moved or spoke, as if afraid that any sound might break the spell that had been cast by the music. Then Wellington began to applaud, slowly at first, his hands coming together with increasing enthusiasm as he processed what he had just witnessed. The rest of the crowd followed, their applause building to a standing ovation that echoed through the concert hall with genuine appreciation rather than polite obligation. Marcus stood from the piano bench, his face flushed with the emotion of having shared his gift publicly for the first time in years. He looked out at the crowd of wealthy, powerful people who were now seeing him, truly seeing him, as something other than invisible service staff. "Marcus," Wellington said, approaching the stage with an expression that held newfound respect and perhaps a touch of shame. "That was absolutely extraordinary. Where did you learn to play like that?" "I graduated from the New England Conservatory 12 years ago, sir. I was building a career as a performance pianist when my wife died and I became a single father. I needed steady income and reliable hours to care for my daughter, so I took this job to make sure I could provide for her and be there when she needed me." Wellington stood silent for a moment, clearly moved by Marcus's story. "Why have you never mentioned your musical background?" Marcus looked directly at Wellington, then out at the audience of elegantly dressed philanthropists. "I never wanted anyone to think I was unserious about my work here, or that I expected anything more than what I was hired to do." Wellington nodded slowly, the weight of those words settling over him. Marcus returned to the piano and played Bach's air on the G string, Emma's favorite lullaby. When he finished, Wellington made an announcement that would change everything. "The Thornfield Foundation is prepared to establish a full scholarship fund that will allow you to return to performing while maintaining financial security for you and your daughter." 6 months later, Marcus was performing regularly with the City Symphony Orchestra, with Emma proudly watching from the front row at every performance, proof that sometimes the courage to share who we truly are can transform not just our own lives, but the lives of everyone watching. What hidden talents are you suppressing? Share this story if you believe everyone deserves a second chance to pursue their dreams.